just time to experience New Mexico. I've been to New Mexico, great food. You've got your red versus green chilies. I'm a green guy. Whatever that changes between us is okay. There are sweeping vistas. It's a great road trip state. I cannot recommend New Mexico enough. Enjoy starry night skies, delicious cuisine, and unique architecture you won't find anywhere else. Learn more and plan your next trip to New Mexico at newmexico.org/solid. New Mexico, true.
Welcome to the Solid Verbal.
The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo woo!
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrand. Joining me, as always, over there in New York City, my good friend Dan Rubenstein. Sir, how are you?
You know, as the internet's representative of Wolfpack Nation and the NC State universe, dark day, Ty.
I know.
Do I have faith in the pack? Do I back the pack to turn this around? I got nothing but faith, Ty. I'm filled with faith. Dark day. The wounds are still fresh. How are you?
34-point defeat, I'm not going to lie, has me a bit demoralized here. I feel like the wind's been removed from the sails.
We pushed our chips to the center, Ty, and it doesn't always work out.
Doesn't always work out, but nonetheless, we've come back to do yet another recap podcast. This one for week 8. We called it Semi-Formal Saturday, which it appears PJ Fleck took quite literally by wearing a yellow Minnesota sweater over top of a shirt and tie, which I thought was a nice little look for him.
Yeah, he's been doing that sweater tie thing for a while. I think it's great to me.
Oh, I love it. I'm all in on that.
It's sort of a casual bro Mr. Rogers. Great.
What did you think of week 8 otherwise? We joke about the NC State stuff, but we had a number of intriguing matchups, certainly consequential outcomes here.
Yes.
Purdue, Ohio State will be the game that we lead with. I thought some clarity in the Michigan State game. We had your Oregon Ducks falling on the road at Wazoo. General takeaways from week 8.
They're the sort of open wounds, the weaknesses of a lot of teams that hadn't fully been exploited were exploited. That was, if there was a single cohesive theme to this week, whether it was Michigan State and their offense, even with a good defensive performance and forcing turnovers, not being able to consistently or even get to an average point of moving the ball, not being able to do anything against Michigan at home, whether it was Ohio State and their offensive line and running issues and open field tackling issues, getting by, but until a team was ready to exploit it with a dude amongst dudes, Rondale Moore, it wasn't gonna work out. And then Oregon, with going on the road and with its secondary, exploited against Stanford, didn't fully lose them the game, but against a team like Washington State, they saw the wound, they saw their opening, and it was, for lack of a better term, what was the measurement in Star Wars, the Death Star, it was a parsec. It was the tiny size, and it's a much larger size for Oregon and their defense against an open passing attack. But that's what I saw from, it was week 8, right? Penn State did more of the same, but survived, so they didn't fully fall under that. But otherwise, since there weren't a ton of headliners, that didn't truly apply to a lot of teams. I thought the TCU thing, that defense was ready to leak, and Oklahoma was very happy to drain them, and they did. And Mississippi State's offense, I'm going through every game.
Yeah, I was going to say, we don't need to do the show.
I know. We're good. We're going to play the reverbs, and there you have it, an 8-minute podcast. Mississippi State and their offense, looking better recently, but seeing those wounds fully exploited by LSU kind of made sense in the end.
I got to be honest, because we are a transparent podcast, we try to connect with the people with some degree of authenticity. My only real observation from yesterday, or I'll say the one that I felt the most energy around, was a text message that I sent to you at 6:10 yesterday. Quote, "Have we talked at all about Steven Montez's pencil-thin mustache?"
Yeah, from everything that happened, you do lock in on facial hair. It's actually a pretty strong mustache year with Gardner Minshew.
It's
also
a great
bringing up
a great mustache year, But Stevie Montez cuts it low like a soccer pitch, and it's precisely 10 hairs wide at all points. Like, you can't do that with Harry's. No disrespect to our sponsor. You almost need a laser beam to get that kind of precision. I am immensely impressed by what he's got going on there on his facial hair.
I'm a little scared to ask because you revealed to the world that you had never heard of Edward James Olmos last week. Do you know who John Waters is?
I know who John Waters is, sure.
The director?
Yeah.
Do you know what his mustache looks like?
I do. There is a comparison to be made there.
There is that fine, precise action is not lost on Steven Montez. Stevie Montez.
On that note, let's get to your Week 8 reverbs before we dive into the recap. Have a listen.
God told Jeff Brom he could either win the Mega Millions jackpot or beat Ohio State by 29. I'll give you two guesses which one he chose. You're only going to need one.
Hey, this is DJ in New Jersey.
Dan and Ty, this is Connor in Austin.
This is Dylan from Washington, D.C.
Hi, it's Tommy from Tallahassee.
John from Los Angeles calling.
Looks like they're going to be lighting up the Salesforce Tower in downtown Indianapolis, black and old gold, for Indiana's one true team, the Purdue Boilermakers.
Is Jeff Brom sexier than Randy Edsel?
Cue up that boat race sound. Go Boilers.
I'll always be a Hoosier, but I have to say the most impressive team that I saw today was the Purdue Boilermakers.
It looks like Purdue was the best 0-3 team in the nation.
Been waiting about 2 years for the Wolverines to win a big enough game to say this, but it's time to put some respect on Michigan's name. Go Blue!
What was your favorite Michigan State third down conversion?
Northwestern has won 11 out of their last 12 conference games and controls their destiny in the Big Ten West.
Need shut out football turtles, Hawkeyes in the blowout. Perky power.
PJ Fleck can go row his boat some other body of water. He isn't getting anywhere in the Sea Red.
Don Frost has finally brought 1997 back to Nebraska.
Penn State won? I think James Franklin doesn't get timeout privileges anymore. I'm really looking forward to Iowa coming to town. That's just going to be great.
Did someone forget to tell Clemson that it's semi-formal Saturday? Because I'm pretty sure they showed up in a full tuxedo.
Ruben's team, there's no Z in Clemson. By the way, 17 points on the Wolfpack was a joke. Go Tigers, nutty 18.
What's going on, guys? Sorry, that was me just taking a puff out of my inhaler thanks to cardiac cues.
We know no king, but the king of the north, whose name is Gardner Minshew. Go Cougs! Woo!
This is Matt from Pullman, Washington, where mustaches win championships.
But is Manny Wilkins the most confoundingly good, but not good enough quarterback ever?
I am still waiting for the Kyle Whittingham November meltdown. But, baby, it's October.
And just the one piece of advice for everybody else on Bama's schedule, when you win the coin toss, don't defer.
Alabama just gave a Gatorade bat to Butch Jones. That has to be a first for an analyst, right?
You should ask not what your offense can do for you, but what you can do for your offense. My boy Kennedy Brooks and the OU offense had themselves a day.
The backup is better than the starter for the Horned Frogs.
Just wanted to remind everyone that the Cincinnati Bearcats are 8-0.
Just got done watching Michigan crush Little Brother. They didn't put him in a crock pot. I'd say that Michigan D steamed him up in the pressure cooker.
All right, there you go, Dan. We had people tweeting in how excited they were to hear the reverbs. As always, a ton of energy. Big thanks to our boy Taylor, who cuts those up early on a Sunday morning. Against all odds, we had hundreds upon hundreds come in this week. And as ever, he did a remarkable job cutting up, super cutting, gluing together the verbaler sentiment out there in the world. So thank you.
The calls are almost getting too well thought out. People are almost like, oh, I'm watching this. I'm going to think about what I'm going to say. I'm going to workshop it in my head.
Yeah.
All right. Got it. 408 verbal 1. Execute.
On that note, let's get to, I guess, the big headlining game of the week, Dan. Purdue 49, Ohio State 20. I believe this would be a boat racing. Raise your hand, Mr. Rubenstein, if you had Purdue winning this game by 29 points.
Yeah, not I, said the Fly. I think we may have both. I know I had Purdue covering and keeping it close.
I did as well.
To see them separate themselves from Ohio State in the manner in which they did, the situational opportunities that they took advantage of, out-athleting Ohio State at moments when Purdue had the ball, not anything I expected, especially after how Purdue started the season, though they have come on pretty well lately.
Well, that's the thing. So they've won 4 in a row now, but let's go back to Wednesday, because when you and I tried to break down this game, we looked at the line, we saw 12.5. Okay. Felt a little fishy. 12.5. Felt a little low. We've been saying for a couple weeks now that the Ohio State defense was very gettable. What I didn't expect is to see Purdue put this kind of defensive effort out there. I remember back to the previews where defense was going to be a concern for Purdue. Ohio State has so many weapons on offense, and Purdue was so aggressive that Ohio State just could not get into rhythm. We know that the running game's been a bit of a concern for Ohio State, but what I thought we saw in this one in particular, never mind the fact that Dwayne Haskins threw the ball 73 times and logged 470 yards.
Yeah.
If you watch the game, he was uncomfortable. He was out of sync. Purdue managed to take that number on the chin, all while not really being cut up, while not being damaged by the passing game from Ohio State. They really did a good job game planning here, both offensively, which we can talk about, and defensively, which to me remained the biggest surprise coming out of this one.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my surprise had to do with Ohio State not being able to execute very specific things where they had an immense talent advantage, coaching advantage, I think, given, what Ryan Day was able to do early on in the season with this offense. And Purdue just did a phenomenal job. I mean, we saw the fake field goal at a certain point to continue a drive, but right. DJ Knox getting through the first level of that Ohio State defense and just making guys miss pretty consistently. I know he had a couple of those longer runs, which accounted for a good chunk of his yardage. And really the story was what David Blau was able to do. They were backed up to the 2-yard line early on.
98-yard drive.
98-yard.
Yeah.
Woo! That, and then just, you get the ball to Rondale Moore with just a little bit of room. True freshman, highly recruited. So he didn't fully come out of nowhere. But I think he was committed to Texas, I want to say. But to get him the ball in a little bit of space, to break tackles with not being a particularly big dude, and seeing Ohio State not being able to, especially in the back end of their defense, really solve and muscle around Purdue's receivers. I think testament to Purdue first and foremost. Disappointing if you're an Ohio State fan, clearly. And then on offense, for Ohio State, to have to throw the ball 73 times. And I know they were moving the ball and then until they didn't, essentially. And, putting together drives that stalled over and over again. But to not be able to get the ground game going, to still see offensive line issues, whether it was, Isaiah Prince out wide or I think Michael Jordan, which is funny to say, inside for this Ohio State offense. Very strange to see the manner in which Ohio State lost this game. And you can just look at the line essentially saying, oh, Dwayne Haskins threw it 70 times. Ohio State definitely lost.
Right.
Because that is not a recipe for Ohio State to win.
No, and by the way, you mentioned Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore has been having a good year all along. What I enjoyed in this one, we saw a little bit. Remember the old Ike Hilliard stop and pop move?
Of course.
The Sugar Bowl. You remember, everyone remembers that who follows college football. There's a little bit of Ike Hilliard, a little bit of that stop and pop somewhere in Rondale Moore. That kid got moves, and he's only a freshman. He's only going to get better. I am excited to see what he has in store the rest of the way. As we said, Purdue now winners of 4 straight.
When old friends meet up once a year to just, we go to this diner every year, November 1st on my birthday. It's almost like Ohio State and getting torched for 50 points is like that annual, let's meet up in mid-season and, we're going to get murdered. Okay. Where do you want to go next?
Michigan 21 and Michigan State 7. Let's stay in the Big Ten. There are like a bunch of different ways you can dissect this game. I think we got to start here, though, and look at what Michigan did on defense. They smothered Michigan State. We were never all that high on Michigan State's offense, to be fair. But listen to these numbers here, Dan. Sparty held to 94 total yards. Michigan outgains them 395-94. Sparty also held to 0 for 12 on third downs, held to just 15 yards on the ground. And then you take the flip side here. Michigan on offense held the ball for 41 minutes and 3 seconds. Saw a nice game for Shea Patterson, made a couple big throws, including that long one to Donovan Peoples-Jones, that beauty for a touchdown.
Yes.
A workmanlike effort for Karan Higdon, who had 33 carries, which is a lot, for 144 yards. I thought a really good effort here for Michigan. A weird game delayed by weather. The defense, again, playing top-notch. The offense doing what it needs to do, not shooting itself in the foot. This is a really good, strong effort from Michigan that, in light of the Ohio State loss now and what we saw from Penn State kind of stumbling under its own weight, this whole week has reshaped how I feel about the Big Ten East and the Big Ten as a whole.
And Michigan escaping Purdue on their schedule. Huge win.
Yeah,
for the Wolverines. I watched all of this game and came away incredibly impressed given where they've been to where they are now. Michigan's offensive line, even though they did get pushed around a little bit at times by a very good Michigan State front, for the patience, for the improvement, for some of the protection that Shea Patterson had. He was running around a little bit, but most of the time he was kept relatively clean. I like that they were running him a little bit. Karan Higdon helped to pace this offense, and Michigan's defense with perhaps their most talented player. I don't know if he's their best player, but whatever. Rashawn Gary not making the trip, not playing in this game, and them not missing a beat up front. Testament to how well they've developed and recruited talent on defense. And I mentioned this, a couple minutes ago with Ohio State, but at a certain point, and we mentioned this with Georgia and their offense and Jim Chaney hopping around a lot and improving offenses, Ed Warner has been around for a long time. He is their offensive line coach, Michigan's offensive line coach, and looks to be like the Johnny Appleseed of dramatically improving your offense.
Right.
He was at Notre Dame, like 2010-11. Their rushing attack goes from like 80th to 20th. He was at Ohio State for a few years as their offensive line dominated. He was at Kansas in like 2007, 2008 during their heyday. He's almost like Forrest Gump, just popping up at huge
showing up
moments.
In black and white photos. How the hell did he get there? Yeah.
He was at Illinois during like the Rashard Mendenhall time. Like he just pops around saying, no. This is how you block.
Right.
No, this is how you run the ball. And Michigan getting into the rhythm that they are. And I think you're right. I think the Big Ten, even though Michigan goes to Columbus, it runs through Michigan right now. And, for them to do what they did to hold down the Michigan State offense, which is, listen, I made a joke about Michigan State having wristbands that say, keep at it, you never know, instead of actual plays, just an uplifting message. Because that is the Michigan State offense.
Right.
Just, keep hammering. You never know when that nail might go in. And not good enough against this Michigan defense. Came away incredibly impressed. Chase Winovich was everywhere. Made the little brother comment, which just screws future generations of Michigan Wolverines.
Does. Hey, don't forget about the Devin Bush thing.
Yes.
The logo before the game. So if you didn't see it, I'm sure if you go out on the internet, you can find highlights of this. But Devin Bush pregame was out center of the field trying to kick up the paint that was at midfield for the Michigan State Spartan logo.
I love it.
I thought it's great. It's not the planting of the flag, and of course it's disrespectful, but this is a rivalry. Like, that's the kind of thing that you would expect. There he is out there trying to basically dig a hole and draw a line and kick up the paint that comprises the logo. I enjoyed that. I kind of enjoyed that.
It's okay. So he was, like there was like the intimidation thing from Michigan State doing their walk and not letting him by and everything like that. And Jim Harbaugh calls it Bush League and Mark D'Antonio. So it's stupid and it's petty, the kicking up of dirt at midfield. But this is college football, brother.
Yeah.
This is where you are stupid and petty. As long as it's a victimless thing, you're not hurting anybody. He's not laundering money. Like, this is just, it's so stupid and so wonderful that I can't help but enjoy
I'm with you.
So,
all right.
Michigan's a grower for sure right now.
Definitely.
Worried about counting on this offense against Clemson, Alabama, but I feel that way about every team. So Michigan's good.
All right, we got to move on. Otherwise, we're not making it through all these games, Dan.
True. Okay.
Let's talk about Washington State and Oregon. Let's talk about Washington State 34 and your Oregon Ducks 20. Oregon had 39. Am I reading this right? 39 yards and just 3 first downs in the first half against Washington State on the road. It was Wazoo's 4th consecutive victory over the Oregon Ducks. I did not watch this game.
Okay.
I read the box score. Certainly, I read plenty of conjecture over what went on, but my guess is that you were watching this in tandem with the Dodgers baseball game yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So there were all sorts of emotional responses taking place over there in Brooklyn.
It was a night.
It was a night. Give me the lowdown here on why this game shook out the way it did.
All right. So as is the case with every game, multiple things can be happening at once. And I want to be very careful to say the first thing that was happening was Washington State demolishing Oregon in the first half.
Okay.
And that was Gardner Minshew being accurate, being timely, playing with a rhythm. The play calling was very good. As soon as Oregon would go to a softer look, Washington State would start gashing them short, start running the ball a little bit. I thought Gardner Minshew was, in that first half, as good a quarterback performance as we saw in the first half anywhere across college football. And consequently, also true, Oregon was terrible in the first half. And not even just missing passes and not being able to move the ball procedurally, penalties. The Washington State had them completely out of rhythm. They looked totally unprepared, and that's on the coaches in the first half. Justin Herbert looked way off. They couldn't move the ball on the ground, through the air, anything. And they to escape the first half only being down 27-0. I know they dropped like a Hail Mary that could have scored them a touchdown at the buzzer at the half, was pretty fortunate to only be down, because at halftime I was like, okay, Oregon's going to lose this game 54-10. They're going to lose this game 48-13, and it's a letdown spot and whatever. The second half, they change, they calm down, they get used to what Washington State's doing up front on defense. They get some stops, they get some interceptions, and it's just Justin Herbert the entire second half, who proves to be very, very good, at least until the end. Oregon outscores Washington State, I think 20-7. And at one point it was 20-0. They were within a touchdown with about 7 minutes left. And Gardner Minshew doesn't have that great of a second half, but makes a pretty perfect throw to put the game away. Oregon still has a chance, down a couple scores with 3 or 4 minutes left. Justin Herbert, good enough at driving them down the field, but as soon as he sort of has to improvise, and this is going to be very strange to say, given that he is a super high draft prospect, he's no Jeremiah Masoli.
No.
When it comes to everything breaking down and making a play. And that is also to say he's excellent. Also to say Washington State's defense did a great job eventually in holding on against Oregon. But Washington State, the better team, not just last night, the better team, period. Oregon needs to do a lot better coming out against tough opponents, especially on the road. And they will, but it wasn't happening last night. I never considered Oregon to be a contender for the conference or the playoff. And last night they showed good fight in the second half, which is encouraging, but they played nowhere near a complete game.
Right.
Good for Washington State, who, buddy, they go to Stanford next week, and everybody's just going to win something big and be let down in this conference, aren't they?
Yeah, that's the way we're trending. By the way, really cool scene for game day.
Oh, incredible.
Incredible scene.
Yeah.
Cool to see that happen. I saw Lee Corso picked Washington State. Turns out he was right. We both picked Washington State. Turns out we were both right as well. Like you said, a bit of a letdown spot for Oregon, but Wazoo's been playing good football this year, and it was a nice win for them at home. So, again, your final score here, 34-20, as the Cougs take it to Oregon. Let's move over to the SEC. We talked a little bit about LSU and Mississippi State. Remember, do you remember a week ago when we were like, hey, Mississippi State, they're starting to figure out this offense thing.
Right. Running well, good defense. Yeah.
Mississippi State has now scored a collective 16 points against Kentucky, Florida, and LSU on their SEC schedule. They lose this game 19-3. As you would expect from hearing that score, it was a defensive-minded football game. It was also a game in which Mississippi State couldn't throw at all on LSU, and Nick Fitzgerald finished the game with 4 interceptions. They were able to get a little going, Mississippi State, on the ground, but it wasn't nearly enough to cut it against a really good sound defense like LSU. I had a laugh. I read on one of the recaps of this game, it described Mississippi State's third down offense as, quote, hopeless, which felt about right because they went 2 for 14 on third downs in this football game. And on the flip side, I just got to be fair here. LSU couldn't really figure out the Bulldog defense either. It was just that they didn't make as many mistakes. And they were able to get close enough later in this football game to line Cole Tracy up for 4 field goals. 19-3. Again, your final score here, Dan. How much of this game did you watch, and what was your takeaway?
A good chunk back and forth with the other screens, which are basically iPads and laptops with Ohio State, Purdue, and then LSU, Mississippi State as it was coming in and out. First of all, Mississippi State scored last season basically the same personnel on offense and defense, 26 points a game in the SEC.
Yeah.
Right now they're at 9 points per game. So in terms of, and we got asked this in our Q&A, coaches we are disappointed in within the context of them having talent. So like it's not totally, but like looking at Scott Frost and Chip Kelly, Willie Taggart to a certain extent with the injuries there. The disappointment might be in Joe Moorhead's offense with Mississippi State. That I think might be the clearest given what they returned, given what they look like against LSU. I don't expect them to score 35 points against this LSU defense, but more than that. And Nick Fitzgerald's line throwing 24, 25 times against LSU is just the math translates to what Dwayne Haskins did throwing 73 times. You're throwing the ball 25 times with Nick Fitzgerald. Things ain't good.
No.
Things are not good for Mississippi State. And, LSU was pretty timely, did what they needed to do. Cole Tracy might be the offensive MVP of this team. I don't know if I can. I know he plays special teams, but in terms of scoring points, that might be the answer there. Joe Burrow looked pretty flat at times. And I think that's somewhat of a testament to Mississippi State's defense, and just the offense really didn't get into a rhythm where you say, okay, I can see them scoring 30.
No,
which is what you need to score against Alabama.
Hey, and that's what
35. Yeah.
That's what I was saying. The LSU defense was obviously solid holding Mississippi State down, but so was the Mississippi State defense holding down LSU. They look good in their own right. They've been good this year as well. One thing I do need to add here before we move on, I don't want to gloss over this because I thought the most significant moment in the game came with like 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Devin White for LSU ejected on a BS targeting call, which was not targeting. They reviewed it. That was not targeting.
If you watch that, there was a low angle right by the play as it happened, right along the sideline. He clearly led with his hands.
Yeah, he was pushing. Is that a penalty to lead with your hands?
Led with his hands, which sort of softened and collapsed as like the upper part of his body hit Nick Fitzgerald. But for him to be ejected for targeting and will miss, short of the conference reversing the call, which I don't know if they're going to do, he'll miss the first half against Alabama, I believe. And that just, it strikes me as so wrong. It was nowhere near the spirit or the intent or the actual rule of law of the targeting penalty. And it's a pretty significant bummer because he is the heartbeat of that LSU defense.
19-3, your final score. LSU has Alabama, I believe, in 2 weeks here, first week of November. And Alabama went to Tennessee and won 58-21. Sorry, Charlie Tuna, if you had Bama minus 29.5 here. Bama really did try to get a front door cover here, and they almost freaking did it in Neyland Stadium. Another ridiculous outing for Tua Tagovailoa. He throws 4 touchdown passes to 4 different receivers on Bama's first 4 possessions to give them a 28-0 lead at the end of the first quarter. Also of note, Alabama outgained Tennessee 217-6 in the first quarter of play here, Daniel. Your final score, 58-21.
Yeah, not an enormous takeaway from this game because it feels like more of the same, but Tua's knee looks to be all right, and they were down while Alabama down Devontae Smith ultimately doesn't make a huge difference. Jalen Waddle looked very good. Jerry Jeudy had an incredible play. And the only real takeaway from Tennessee, because this is not what Tennessee is going to look like in a couple years, hopefully for the better. I enjoyed that at least in the middle of the game when Jarek Warrantano went down. Hope he's okay. Keller Christ came in, and listen, Keller Christ is not that good. He transfers to Tennessee in hope of starting, but he won at Stanford. He makes a couple of big throws, which hopefully helps to jumpstart things big picture for Tennessee. But yeah, Alabama is just, they are the looming storm over the sport. It's, they are completely starting to shade out college football as Ohio State goes down. Clemson looks like they're coming into their own. We'll talk about them in a second, I'm sure. But out west in the Pac-12, the Big 12, everybody has these obvious glaring flaws. And Alabama is just like the old lobsterman from Maine is like, oh, so there's a storm coming. Haven't seen something like this. It's just, I don't know what to say about Alabama. They're excellent.
All right, let's talk about some of the other games in the SEC quick. Got a couple other ones here that I want to get through. Kentucky 14, Vandy 7.
I treasure Benny Snell.
Yeah, let me tell you what I liked about this game.
Yeah, he's the entirety of that offense.
Let me tell you what I liked about this game. Kentucky was off a bye week, and they should have looked better in this game. Fine.
At home, yeah.
But it's late in the fourth quarter. The game's tied at 7. Vandy gets all the way down into the red zone off a long play and a nice drive. Just like that, they force a fumble. Kentucky forces a fumble, and then they feed the beast that is Benny Snell. Benny Snell had 10 carries for 74 yards on the ensuing drive. For a lot of running backs, that's a game, brother. 10 carries, 74 yards. They give him the damn ball. He takes matters into his own hands. Football doesn't need to be complicated all the time. When you have Benny Snell, give him the damn ball. He scores a touchdown. Kentucky ends up winning this one, 14-7. Kentucky, by the way, 6-1, bowl eligible for the third straight year. They're on the road at Mizzou. They host Georgia. They're at Tennessee. They've got Middle Tennessee. Then they're at Louisville. Probably talking like a 9 or 10 win season for Kentucky, which is just awesome for them. So good win. Not always the most exciting, but they get the job done and move on to next week.
Yeah, Josh Allen looks like an All-American, which is something I did not anticipate saying this year, but college football and football's one true Josh Allen. Couple more sacks is incredible for this defense. And I haven't given this full thought because I'm just thinking about it in terms of Benny Snell. He has to be college football's offensive Sherpa.
Yeah.
Putting everything on his back and guiding Kentucky to the bare minimum amount of offensive success, which he is not bare minimum. He is everything. He is magic, but he is your 2018 college football offensive Sherpa, doing all the heavy lifting.
Missouri 65, Memphis 33. I thought this one would be closer, but Missouri blows them out. We also had Arkansas shutting out Tulsa by a 23-0 score. And finally in the SEC, Auburn 31, Ole Miss 16. We said a lot of things about Auburn and Gus Malzahn and maybe the Auburn Tigers being broken. But in steps Ole Miss, the cure for the underachieving run game. And lo and behold, Auburn emerges with 269 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. Nice game for Jatarvius Whitlow, who had 170 on the day.
Booby Whitlow.
This does stop the skid for Auburn. It's not going to stop the questions, but we'll see what happens the rest of the way against A&M and Georgia and Bama. Doesn't mean that Gus Malzahn's out of the woods, but at least for the short term, nice win here against Ole Miss on the road.
Yeah, never the best when there are huge questions about your job security, no matter the size, the astronomical size of your buyout, and that's pre-A&M, Georgia, and Alabama in the same month.
Exactly.
But yes, cure for the common offense, good for Auburn to get at least a little bit of momentum. Mostly on the ground, Jarrett Stidham was fine, but the defense was very good, overwhelmed Ole Miss's offense for much of this game, and good for Booby Whitlow to finally sort of establish himself. We thought it would be Cam Martin before the season started, but Auburn may have, at times, a pretty decent guy in that backfield.
Before we move any further, the show is still sponsored by our good friends over at The Athletic, FYI. I don't know if we've talked about it lately, but we've been just imbibing the great knowledge that is imparted upon us over there at The Athletic. All college football season.
Ty? Thesaurus.
I know. All college football season, it has been my Rolodex of good, enchanting, comprehensive information about college football. Now you can sign up and receive 40% off your very first year. It's not too late. Still got a lot of season left to be played. You can get it for $2.99 a month. That is high-quality sports journalism, courtesy of our friends at The Athletic. All you need to do to read without ads, without being inundated with stuff you don't want, is go to theathletic.com/solidverbal. That is theathletic.com/solidverbal. Jump on in. Numerous friends of the podcast are taking part in this movement, the future of sports journalism over there at theathletic.com/solidverbal. Again, 40% off your very first year, Dan.
Yeah, all killer, no filler. I'm always skeptical when people tout apps, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm not downloading your app, whatever, fine. I like just read everything, via Twitter or whatever. Their app is incredible.
It's very good.
It organizes everything. You can just click a button. You come across a story, you want to read it later on, whatever, you forget it. You can just click a little bookmark button and it organizes all the stories you want to read later on. You can read them offline. I'm just a huge fan of how well executed this app is. And The Athletic really is. This is no BS. It is my go-to all week, not just college football, NBA, baseball, whatever, across national writers, local writers. Athletic is my newspaper.
Also,
done.
You used the title of a very famous Sum 41 album to describe The Athletic, all killer, no filler.
Ty, this is why we're just a good pairing. You understand me.
We are also brought to you today, in part, due to the sponsorship from our good friends over at Casper.
Yes.
Casper, as you know, a sleep brand that continues to revolutionize its line of products to create an exceptionally comfortable sleep experience one night at a time. I had one of those nights last night. Slept in my Casper, slept like a rock the whole night through, and that's an accomplishment for me. You know how I always talk to you about my
You're
issues
a vampire.
sleeping. Yeah. They've got 3 mattress models. The original Casper, the Wave, and the Essential. Casper mattresses are perfectly designed to soothe and cradle your body's natural geometry, Dan. So whether you're a rhombus or a trapezoid, fear not. Casper is there to take care of you through the long, cold nights. They've got a breathable design, helps you sleep cool, helps regulate your body temperature all throughout the night, and it's delivered to your door in a small, how did they do that sized box with free shipping and returns in the United States. In Canada, they've also got a 100-night risk-free Sleep On It trial. Like we said, we both have Caspers. I switched to a Casper after the previous mattress we had was killing my back. It showed up at the door, pulled it in the house, cool box. You pop the seal in this thing, and it just inflates. It's freaking cool.
It's amazing.
And in like 20 minutes, you have a brand new mattress. I'd recommend it to everybody. I have recommended it to everybody. I have friends who have purchased them as well. I'm not just saying it. Now you can get $50 towards select mattresses by visiting casper.com/verbal. And then when they ask you, use the code VERBAL, VERBAL at checkout. That is casper.com/verbal. Offer code VERBAL, $50 off your mattress purchase. Terms and conditions do apply. Okay.
What were the 3, by the way, the 3 types of Casper mattresses available?
You've got an original, you've got a Wave, and you've also got the Essential.
Would you call that the ultimate sleeping triple option?
It's the holy trinity of sleeping options.
Good use of geometry, by the way. And I would add, if you're not a rhombus or whatever, it's cool too. If you have a normal body, if you are a, Ty, you ready?
Yeah.
Dodecahedron?
Yep. 12, that 12-sided?
Okay. That sounds right.
Yeah.
That sounds right. All right, let's talk football.
Big 12. Only 2 games to discuss here. Let's go through them quickly. Oklahoma 52, TCU 27. This was my lock of the week.
Lock of the week.
For a while there, Dan, it was looking like we had the occult forces of the factor of 6 applying in this game.
Well, I mean, we did have your 19, right, with LSU?
I don't know if I called for 19 in that game.
No, I'm saying, but you just like when teams score 19.
I'm very strange about the 19-point total.
Yeah.
Yes. Oklahoma won by 25. For a while, they were up 18. This was the 4th straight time Oklahoma scored 38 or more against TCU, which is concerning if you're Gary Patterson. That's a bit concerning. We also saw Michael Collins come on for Sean Robinson midway through the second quarter. He did make a difference for the Horned Frogs through 2 quick touchdown passes, got TCU back in the game. But really the story here, I thought, was Oklahoma's ground game. Great game for Kennedy Brooks. He's a freshman. Had something of a coming out party in this game, 168 yards and a touchdown. Trey Sermon also up over 100 yards with 2 touchdowns of his own. A bit of a scare for him when he went down with a knee injury.
He gets beat up.
I think he's going to be okay, but
good.
Oklahoma clearly dominated on the ground. They also had Kyler Murray with another casual 4 touchdowns through the air. The final score here was 52-27. The Sooners knock off TCU on the road. And, Oklahoma, as I said at the top, in a bit of an interesting spot now. I don't see them losing the rest of the way. Depending on how things shake out in front of them, they could still be a factor in this whole playoff discussion, certainly as it relates to the Big 12, again, depending on how things go. So this is a big win that they needed on the road, and they got it here.
Yeah, I would also add, so it's Ruffin McNeil's first game as interim defensive coordinator, and all things considered, I think TCU only scored 20 points on offense. Kevontae Turpin had a ridiculous kick return for a touchdown, and given the number of drives TCU had and making the quarterback switch, whatever, I thought mostly positive for Oklahoma on defense, which is good. That's not a thing we got to say a lot these past few weeks with Oklahoma's defense. You neglected to mention Michael Collins, Penn transfer.
That's right. Penn
Quakers transferring into TCU. Also, I believe Michael Collins is the name of Liam Neeson, the Irish revolutionary from 1993. I knew the name Michael Collins from somewhere. And I went back and confirmed that I am, in fact, not a full idiot. But as it relates to Oklahoma, just Kyler Murray's incredible. Sorry, yep. Mac Brown. Kyler Murray. CeeDee Lamb, very nice day. And for Oklahoma to go on the road against a TCU defense that had played pretty well, all things considered with where their offense has been, for Sean Robinson to be benched, for Oklahoma to do that was pretty impressive, even with what we've seen from the Sooners. And I don't know where their tougher games. Oklahoma State is looking down. West Virginia is on the road. Texas Tech, I think, is going to be very tricky on the road in a couple weeks, I believe. So Oklahoma's in a good spot to win 10 games. And I think you're right. If they win out and everybody else sort of falls by the wayside, given the workability of the schedule, Oklahoma's not out of anything.
They're not out of it. I should add that this was my mowing the lawn game. I listened to this one on the radio.
Oh, okay.
And
who was calling it? It was the Oklahoma broadcasters, national broadcasters?
I was listening to the Oklahoma broadcasters, and they were immensely entertaining. They had one guy on the sideline throwing shade, and it was enjoyable. I like to do that. I listen to a lot of games in the car.
Do you have a riding mower or you push?
Push mower.
Okay,
got
good.
The push mower.
Making sure.
Got my exercise in. I think it's probably the final mow of the year. So it was a big deal.
Deal. Did you shave a design?
No design. Didn't have any balloons or confetti for the last mowing of the year, but I listened to this game. I streamed it through the phone. Wish I knew the names of the Oklahoma commentators, but I was immensely enjoyed. They did a great job. So kudos to them as well.
Did you cut your lawn especially short to honor Steven Montez?
Well, I tried to cut it short. I tried to go all the way down to like setting 2 on my Toro mower. Toro, not a sponsor of the Verbal, by the way.
No.
And what I found is that was a little too low. That was Steven Montez low. And
can't do that.
Decided that I needed to go back up to level 3.
Minshew over Montez.
Did go Minshew over Montez. Thank you.
Good call.
Finally, in the Big 12, you talked about Texas Tech.
I did.
Texas Tech, 48-16 over Kansas. More importantly, can we put our hands together for the return of British comedy legend Alan Bowman?
Oh, my God.
3 weeks ago.
Again.
3 weeks ago, the kid had a collapsed lung, which sounds awful because it is. This week, a casual 408 and 3 touchdowns through the air. Good on him.
I would opt out of all appearances in public for years if even a tiny portion of my lung collapsed.
Yes.
And Alan Bowman's out here coming back and throwing for 400 yards in a Big 12 game. And Pookie Williams, Kansas, a bright spot. Puka, like the shell necklace that you probably wore.
Right.
And Texas Tech is the story here because I like how they've grown. I like Alan Bowman a lot, especially it's one of those things where you have a really good freshman quarterback that just makes you feel warm inside. And good for Tech, who is now, I believe, 5-2.
Tech is 5-2. They go to Iowa State, come back home against Oklahoma, back home against Texas, to K-State and Baylor to close out their season. But can I ask a real question? That might sound stupid.
I'm ready.
Is Alan Bowman actually a British comedy legend?
He's not, to my knowledge.
I can't find any record of an Alan Bowman when I search Google outside of the Texas Tech quarterback.
So there's an Alan Bowman who is, I think he is British, and he is according to Wikipedia, born in 1944, a British classicist and academic, went to Oxford, and I think he's just a professor. But there is something, I want to say Alan Partridge is the name of a British character. It's a Steve Coogan character, and Bowman just also sounded very British.
Okay.
So I stapled those two things together.
Alan Bowman, British comedy legend. Had a nice
It does sound like if somebody said to you that like, oh, I'm way into British comedy. I'm way into like the original Office. I'm way into Monty Python. Obviously, I'm an Alan Bowman super fan. Like you would just nod and you're like, this all sounds correct.
No. All right. Let's go to the Pac-12. Got a couple games to get through quickly. Washington 27, Colorado 13. Aside of the Stevie Montez stash, Myles Gaskin didn't play. Laviska Shenault didn't play. Jay McIntyre didn't play. Delbrick Abrams didn't play. Colorado's freaking kicker didn't play. Both teams a little banged up here. This was actually a one-score game until late in the fourth quarter. Washington, I was thinking about this. I jotted it down on my note sheet. I have here, quote, Washington looked a little flat. Isn't that sort of the theme for Washington this year? Looking a little flat?
Yeah. I mean, the Auburn loss has not aged well. The Oregon loss hasn't necessarily aged well. Yeah, there is something just off. They are in need of some sort of firmware upgrade at the moment. And I don't know if that means it's going to be one of the 14 Jakes behind Jake Browning for next year, but there is an unevenness to Washington that I think is unexpected from where they've been these past couple of years.
27-13, Washington does pull away late and knock off the Buffaloes. Stanford 20, Arizona State 13. Bryce Love left this one in the third quarter, had a left ankle injury. It feels to me, Dan, like we're getting real close to that point where Bryce Love just says, you know what, it's been real. We'll catch y'all on the flip side of this thing. I'm going pro.
Hate to see it because healthy Bryce Love behind a pretty good offensive line. And I will stand by this, even with the season he's had, when everything is clicking for Bryce Love. So all things being even, everything's clicking for everybody. He is the single most dangerous college football player with the ball in his hand. And it sucks to see Stanford not have that this year. But all things considered, KJ Costello going on the road looks extremely good, efficient, finds a number of receivers. JJ Arcega-Whiteside and I think Trent Irwin both had really nice games. Arizona State, I don't think the back half of their season is going to go particularly well.
No, but they did have more yards and turnovers than Stanford, so that's something. They also had 12 tackles for loss, so trying to impact the game with their defense obviously held Stanford down to some degree, but not enough to get the W. They lose 20-13 to the Cardinal.
Good news for Arizona State. They get USC next week.
That's
which
right.
Is a cure for a lot of common issues.
Utah 41, USC 28. Utah was down 14-0 with about 6 minutes left in the first quarter, and then proceeded to rip off 34 unanswered points. They outgained USC 541-205. Utah coming into its own on offense. They've averaged 41 points per game, 486 yards per game in the last 3. Tyler Hunt for the third straight game, completing over 70% or more of his passes. JT Daniels on the flip side, 6 for 16 for 89 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions before he left in the second half with a concussion.
Yeah. Hope he's all right. Hope he bounces back. Utah might be the college football grower of the year. Starting the season, almost losing to NIU, and then offense waking up in October in a pretty major way. So cool to see. Tyler Huntley looking very, very good. Zach Moss getting it done on the ground. I don't know if they, Britton Covey's, I think he was on a mission, an LDS mission. He comes back and he's been pretty good for them. They don't really have a big game-changing receiver consistently, but the story, because this, I don't know how much it told us new about Utah. USC, within the context of their talent level, and I know it's a true freshman quarterback, that's understandable, that they're going to have some offensive issues. USC is bad on offense.
Yeah.
Like I could probably find a more accurate, more nuanced descriptor, but the fact remains they have talent. I really do like Michael Pittman out wide. I think he's one of the best receivers in the Pac-12. But for them not to be able to move the ball on the ground at all consistently over the course of the year, I don't even know if they were in the positive against Texas, into positive yardage overall. And I know including sacks is not a good indicator, but the offense is underwhelming would be kind at this point. USC has had 4 top 10, if not top 5 recruiting classes in a row. At a certain point, you're like, these coaches don't know fully what they're doing to consistently move the ball. And it's a bummer because it's hurting the Pac-12. It's hurting USC. It's hurting college football that we don't get a competitive offense with this much talent on the field.
And finally, in the Pac-12, UCLA wins by 1 over Arizona, 31-30. Josh Kelly, 4 straight games now over 120 yards, which is an accomplishment. Yeah, in the previous 31 games, UCLA had only 3 100-yard rushers. So the fact that Kelly's done it in 4 straight games is certainly an accomplishment. And finally, Cal 49, Oregon State 7, Dan.
Yes, Cal's first road Pac-12 win since, I believe, 2015.
Yep.
Cal needs to get way better on offense. Oregon State needs to get way, way better at everything. I imagine they will. But there is something to hang your hat on if you're Cal. That's a baby step forward. And you did neglect to mention, Ty, not only did Michigan have a great day, but in relief, Wilton Speight for UCLA.
That's right.
A nice day. Dorian Thompson-Robinson goes out. He starts the game really well. Wilton Speight in relief, throws a couple touchdown passes, and good to see that he's at least health-wise on a playable level, because UCLA needs depth wherever they can get it, and good for the Bruins holding on as Arizona storm back. Good for the Bruins, who now have won twice. Hey, that's a thing. 2-2. They're not out of the South race, Ty.
Let's circle back to the Big Ten. We talked about the 2 big games at the top, but Penn State 33, Indiana 28. Let me give you my hot takes on Penn State. Can I do that?
I'm ready. We were texting during this.
Can I do that right now? I realize I've been doing the setup for most of these games. Let me rant about Penn State if I could for just a minute.
I'd love that. Floor is yours.
Penn State should have had this game on ice. But I'm going to stand by something I said a couple weeks ago. Maybe it was just in my head. I don't know what I'm saying out loud anymore. I'm getting to that level. They're good enough to win. Penn State is good enough to win or lose to anyone by 7 points. That's the kind of team they are. I talked about Washington coming out a little flat. Penn State is a homeless man's Washington at this point. They come out flat all the time, and they come out flat enough to lose to just about anybody, particularly the teams that are remaining on their schedule. We knew this Indiana game could be a little bit weird. There was a lot of wind. The weather wasn't great. All that. They damn near lost this one. Again, the final, 33-28. Here is where I stand on Penn State. The theme of this season, it's not Trace McSorley. It's not Miles Sanders and what he's doing in the absence of Saquon Barkley. The theme of this season is unforced errors for Penn State. I give you 3 exhibits. First and foremost, the special teams work in this game was awful. They had 2 big returns in the kicking game, but I believe I counted 4 muffed punts I know the wind was an issue, but they also had an extra point blocked. Like, you got to do better. You got to do better than that. And then more broadly, Exhibit B, we've had wide receivers dropping passes all year. I'd love to blame the wind because it was gusty, but they've been dropping passes all year. And then Exhibit C is just dumb play calling. Dumb play calling.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this for a long time now. Bigger picture thing going on with James Franklin. But, yesterday, case in point, you got a situation where you should run the ball, put the game on ice. Instead, they throw it 3 times. Trace McSorley has run the ball 57 times in the last 3 games. He's not a big guy. He's good. He's a good athlete, a very good college quarterback. That's what we can say about Trace at this point. But you run him that much, you're going to get him killed. So whatever their game plan is here on offense, to me, it doesn't feel like it's thought out. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish here. They're 5-2 now. They've got games against Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin left on the schedule. If they play the way that they played, I said this last week too, if they play the way that we saw yesterday against Iowa, Michigan, or Wisconsin, they lose all 3 of those games. So they got to get this thing together in a hurry. Otherwise, it's going south.
Iowa is a full-on better team than Penn State right now.
Right now, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Iowa is, it'll be decided on the field shortly, but Iowa, with how they've looked, and we can get to the Maryland game momentarily, but where Penn State is and where Iowa is doesn't match up in any sort of close way.
No.
And Iowa kills Indiana the week before. And it's just, I think everything you said is right. There's just a sloppiness. I tweeted out that Penn State is the ultimate scrimmage team. Like, they will play to whatever level you would like them to do. They're wandering the countryside.
They are 7
not
points,
separating themselves.
7 points better or worse than any team in the country. It just depends on the day.
Yeah, and it's a bummer because it's Trace McSorley's final year, and you would have liked to see him both play better and be put in a better position to win and show off his abilities.
All right. Well, you mentioned Iowa. Iowa wins 23-0 over Maryland. Matt Brown, our friend over at The Athletic, tweeted this out, and I saw you picked up on it as well. The Iowa-Maryland game had 133 total passing yards and easily ended in under 3 hours. Iowa ran 52 times, and Maryland had 39 total plays, Dan. Iowa also possessed the football for almost 41 minutes in this football game.
I don't like doing my dramatic drive readings when teams aren't necessarily very good and playing what appears to be a good team like Iowa is. But when there are levels of ineptitude that are so severe, so dramatic, Ty. And by the way, I call this Iowa is college football's Greg Maddux for just efficiently just destroying somebody in 2 hours and 45 minutes.
No strikeouts, just a lot of ground balls and weak flares to the infield.
A lot of 7-pitch innings, Ty. Just everything you want out of a starter.
Yep.
But Maryland. Punt. Interception. End of half. Punt. Fumble touchdown. They fumbled it. Punt. End of, mercifully, game.
I thought you were going to go with the heavy metal version of Dvorak.
I know, I considered that, but it wasn't on Spotify when I looked it up 2 seconds ago. So I had to roll with roll with the classics, Ty. Sometimes you have to. Maryland they're something else. But Nate Stanley doesn't necessarily have a good game. Ivory Kelly Martin makes plays at time. IKM has been sort of their go-to guy. This is a team led by a tight end duo. And what is more Iowa than saying that?
That's all Iowa all the time. All right, we got to go quick here. Wisconsin.
Okay, what's next?
49, Illinois 20. Had some snow in this game, which was a lot of fun.
In the snow!
Yeah, big day for Taiwan Deal. Nice effort again for Jonathan Taylor tailback. 2 interceptions for Alex Hornibrook against Illinois. Not the greatest look. But nonetheless, 29-point win. Mirrored the score of that Purdue-Ohio State game for those of you playing the home game. We also had Northwestern 18, Rutgers 15. This entire game was a dramatic drive chart.
It was indeed. And guess what? Nebraska's on the scoreboard in the winning column. And I like that.
Nebraska wins 53-21. 30-28 over Minnesota. Congratulations to them. Almost
Devin Zigbo, 152.
Almost tried to blow this one.
Yeah, they did. They went up 28-0. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Almost tried to blow this one in the third quarter. And then the fourth quarter, they pulled it together. And, nice game for Adrian Martinez and all that. Looking like a 3-9 season, I think, for Nebraska at this point. That's where we're headed.
You know what? That's okay.
That's fine.
I think did you take Minnesota or did you take Nebraska?
I took Nebraska, I believe.
Yeah, it was a good spot for Nebraska, Minnesota coming off the Ohio State game, another road game going to Lincoln, and encouraging. I like that there's no fold to Nebraska. The crease is solid. And Stanley Morgan was who stepped up, not as much JD Spielman this week, but encouraging. Nebraska, I don't know what the other winnable games are on their schedule. I guess they have Illinois and Bethune-Cookman.
Yep.
So circle those. And if you're a Nebraska fan, circle signing day, circle spring practice. It is going to be incremental. I believe that they will improve. You got to weather the storm this year. I can't see them beating. Well, you know what? Michigan State's pretty terrible on one side of the ball. You never know.
Never know.
But yeah, good for the Huskers. Fun to see.
And Dan, we've put this off as long as we can. Clemson 41, NC State 7.
Why? You're killing me, Ty.
This show is nothing if not about simplicity. We have listeners who have busy lives. Many have children, demanding jobs. They're on the go. Here's what you need to know about this game. Nothing worked for NC State, period. Full stop.
They broke.
Nothing worked. They had a couple nice runs. On the whole, could get nothing going on the ground. Had a couple nice throws, Ryan Finley did. Couldn't get any momentum through the air. All told, NC State 2 of 13 on third downs and 3 turnovers. That is not good enough to get the job done against Clemson.
No, a focused Clemson, a Clemson when you have their attention seems pretty dangerous. Even with the true freshman and Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, I think the co-coordinators for Clemson have done a very good job of putting him in a position. It's a lot of quick, play action, one read. If it's not there, go or throw it away. So nothing's too complicated in the Clemson offense. They're just talented and they execute. And it did bum me out as NC State superfan. They're wearing the helmets with the wolf logo, the sort of cartoonish wolf
cool.
logo. And at a certain point, watching Clemson just over and over hammer NC State, I just got that imagery of the coyote, the Roadrunner and coyote.
Yeah.
Think about all the ways the coyote has suffered, whether it's, being flattened or electrocuted or blown up, or an anvil falling, or running into a mountain that's painted to look like a train tunnel. That's the imagery I had during this game. NC State was just flattened, and doesn't mean NC State is bad. It means NC State is not there. And they have a pretty nice schedule to finish out their
season. On the road next week at Syracuse could be interesting.
It could be, yeah.
Could be interesting.
I think Carrier Dome's tough, and this is the second straight road game. I that is not writing in anything for NC State there, but to finish with a Wake team that has taken a pretty big step back to, Louisville is atrocious.
They're bad
this year. North Carolina, I think, is moving in a good direction. NC State can win 9 games.
Also, just want to get this in here. Travis Etienne, 3 more touchdowns in this game. 3rd straight game in which he's had 3 touchdowns, and that's a school record. He's got 14 touchdowns on the year. That leads the ACC, but set a school record. So good for him.
Yeah, they don't do much on the ground, but, they didn't need to. And woof, I'm not going to read drives again, but that NC State drive log is, that's ugly. It's stanky.
Clemson next week is on the road at Florida State. Knowing what you know about Florida State and the state of State's offensive line, I think I like Clemson a lot. We'll talk about this game on Wednesday. Florida State won 38-17, had a bit of a rocky start against Wake Forest. They were down about, 10-0 midway through the first quarter. But then DeAndre Francois, then Cam Akers, Naquan Murray, yeah. They get things rolling. Florida State scores 38 unanswered points. They run away and hide from Wake Forest. A nice win for them. They were favored by 10. We both took the Noles. I'm just very curious about that matchup next week. Very curious.
Yeah, real nice win for Florida State. Beating a bad team, it's nothing that is going to wake you up from your sleep, but for this year's Florida State team, separating themselves from an underwhelming opponent is definitely another step in the right direction. And even amidst all of the struggles this year, Florida State's defensive line,
they're very good.
They are good. Brian Burns.
They're very, very good.
I know they had a player, I don't know if you saw the story during the week, whose family lost their home because of the storm in Florida. I think it's Janorius Robinson. It's good I think he's good. They are overwhelming teams. I'm curious to see that specific matchup. I like Clemson a good amount against Florida State, but how Clemson's offensive line, with a pretty green quarterback still behind them, handles Florida State up front, I think is going to be pretty fascinating, because this is one of the better units in the conference.
Also in the ACC, 2 more games. We had Syracuse winning 40-37 over North Carolina. This one went to overtime. The Cuse now 5-2. I talked about NC State coming to town next week. Would not shock me if we saw another weird Carrier Dome game there. We'll talk about that on Wednesday.
By the way, it's Janarius, not Janorius Robinson for Florida State. My apologies.
And finally, maybe we should talk to our kids about a 10-2 Virginia this year. How do you feel about that?
Listen.
28-14 over Duke. A nice game for Bryce Perkins. He leads in passing and rushing. 10-2 Virginia. It could happen.
Are they the anti-Penn State?
Oh, God.
That they don't have the talent level, but they execute. They don't have the unforced errors. They let you beat yourself. Daniel Jones throws a couple of picks. Virginia's really strong on third down. They don't make mistakes. They take advantage of their offensive skill. Another really nice day for Olamide Zacchaeus. Every time I say it, I hope I'm getting it right, because he is fun. He's tiny, but he's Mr. Yak. And Virginia, yes, in a pretty nice position now with the win over Miami. So they have that tiebreaker. I don't have the ACC standings in front of me, but yeah, I think in terms of, somebody asked us for our Q&A, secret garbage and secretly decent, it has to be Virginia as secretly decent this year, right?
Yeah, and by the way, to your point, if you've ever tailgated at Virginia compared to Penn State, it might be the opposite of Penn State.
I think you're right.
It may actually...
I really do like Charlottesville.
Charlottesville's great. It may be the exact opposite of Penn State tailgating.
That's right. And yeah, Virginia, the Commonwealth Cup looks like it might settle things. Pitt still only has 1 loss. Virginia's sitting there at 3-1, and defense has done a nice job this year, because this Duke offense has moved the ball against some teams.
Absolutely. All right. And very quickly, Temple wins 24-17 in overtime against Cincinnati. Cincinnati no longer undefeated at the hands of the Owls.
No Raquel Armstead either.
No. Buffalo wins 31-17. Boise wins 56-28. Army wins 31-30 in double overtime.
Houston scores 49 points against an option team. That means, a team limiting your possessions, they score 49. They're the opposite of Dvorak, excuse me. Derek King, I'm not right often, trust me. But I was very high on him preseason, coming off of his year last year and pairing with Kendall Briles in that offense. Houston's offense is fun. It's scary. And I'm excited to see what they can do in the American this year. UAB with a very nice win over North Texas. 2 teams that, they're going to go to bowls, 2 of the better group of 5 schools. But in Birmingham, UAB taking them down. I feel bad. I think I cursed Georgetown and the Hornets' nest that is Multisport Field, a.k.a. Cooper Field, although we haven't seen actual evidence. You asked for evidence online. But I liked them big over Lehigh after Lehigh going down the previous week. They only win by 6 because it goes to double overtime, a double overtime thriller at 22-16.
Did you look at the drive chart in that game?
It wasn't pretty, Ty.
Yeah, that's got Dvorak written all over it.
Yes. But Georgetown hangs on 9-9 going into overtime. If you like numbers, that's not a 9-9 thriller. It's not one you see often.
No. Okay, well, there you go. Did
we forget anything, Ty? Did we forget anything? Because we inevitably get tweets that we'll forget to preview or recap a game, not for any good reason, but that'll be like, you talked about Lehigh Georgetown and you didn't talk about
Iowa. Well, Iowa's been the one the last 2 weeks. So my question is, with Iowa looking as sharp as they have, do Iowa fans really want us to talk about the Hawkeyes?
That's true. That's a good point, Ty.
I think next week we have to, because they go to Penn State, and I need to talk about it if only to just vent the repressed feelings I have from watching the Iowa 6-4 victory over Penn State back in, I want to say, 2005.
Let it all out, Ty. No reason to keep it inside.
That 6-4 game has left me scarred and deformed, to quote Emperor Palpatine, Dan. That was a very rough experience in my early 20s.
We all have one of those. We all have one of those 4 quarters of completely inept, at least offense. I know I have mine with Oregon UCLA from 2007. In better news, San Diego State, 6-1. I mean, they barely get by a very bad San Jose State team, but they haven't lost in the Mountain West. They only have that Stanford loss. So in terms of group of 5 schools that, can be in that New Year's conversation, San Diego State is right there. You mentioned the Boise State thing. Brett Rippon with an enormously good game against a bad Colorado State defense, but nonetheless worth mentioning. And Madison Avenue.
Right.
I want to do only one dude this week. You can play the sound. There are other guys like I really liked. Yeah. It's Rondale Moore with an asterisk of Tyler Trent, who, if you saw the story about him, with a rare bone cancer, but he was on the field for Purdue, a big Boilermaker fan, had the Purdue P shaved into the side of his head. An incredible story. Tom Rinaldi interviewed him on the sideline. It's just when that kind of story meets up with such a huge win and environment in Ross-Ade and West Lafayette, it's super cool. We mentioned a bunch of the other big names and stories already. I also want to shout out, just because I worked hard on this, Ty. Albert Oh, God, I was right there. It's Albert O, the tight end for Mizzou.
Yeah.
Okawebanum. Albert Okawebanum. Albert Okawebanum.
Globe?
This is the Mizzou tight end. Might be the best tight end in the SEC. Albert Okawebanum.
Okay.
Really good. But yes, our true dude is Rondale Moore and then Tyler Trent.
There you have it. Week 8 in the books. Big thanks to everybody who called in. 408 Verbal 1. We'll be back on Wednesday to talk through Week 9 college football. Got some interesting games. I mentioned Iowa, Penn State, but Notre Dame traveling to Navy, which sometimes is interesting. Hopefully not this year. Clemson, Florida State, Purdue. What can they do now on the road at Michigan State? And a big one in the SEC with Florida and Georgia. World's largest outdoor cocktail party. We'll be back again Wednesday. In the meantime, don't forget to head on out to our website, solidverbal.com. Sign up for the newsletter, because we're going to have new shirts coming out soon. Want to make sure that you are in the loop on that front. Don't forget to tell all your friends about the show, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and check out the subreddit at reddit.com/r/solidverbal.
Do we have a presence? Do we have a presence on the dark web? Is that something we can arrange?
Don't know. Need to download Tor and check it out.
Okay. I think we just really need, there's sometimes people are hanging around doing wildly illegal things, but while doing so, they want some college football.
The number one podcast of the Silk Road, the Solid Verbal.
That's your words, not mine. Legally, I want to distance myself from all of Ty Hildenbrandt's words. Yes. Thank you very much for listening. Ty, you're great as always.
For that guy over there, my good friend, the great Dan Rubenstein, from myself, Ty Hildebrandt, over here in blustery Eastern Pennsylvania. Catch y'all in a few days. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.